to have it and to make it acceptable to our desires and our needs. We are still talking about the inheritance, the firash, and we are taking it from Surah An-Nisa, the Surah of women, which is the third Surah we are considering while looking at the women in the Quran. You recall that we started this by looking at Allah's own presentation, Allah's own will concerning women, and we prefer not to look at the reality, although we are conscious of the contradiction between the reality and the ideal, but we want to know the ideal with a view to understanding why the realities do not look like the ideal. So our purpose is to ensure that we know what Allah's will on us is. We know what human beings have imposed on us as a matter of fact, and we understand why Allah's will is not being fulfilled in our lives, and to know where the problems lie. We know that there is nothing in this life but must be related to a relationship between a man and a woman. And this relationship is fully owned by the man, the woman. It is the woman that determines this relationship. We know this. We also know that it is the man that manages this relationship. And that is why Allah addresses man with respect to woman. More than 70% of the addresses in the Quran concerning man-woman relationship is directed at the man. The man is being called out constantly to remember his responsibility, to discharge this responsibility, to be conscious of accountability concerning this, and to be conscious of the fact that the effect of mismanagement of relationship is the crisis that we have in society. If there is no marriage, there will be no divorce. If there is no relationship of marriage, there will be no widowing. The widow was a wife of a man that died. If there is no marriage, there won't be orphans. The orphans are children that a woman gave birth to for a man who dies. So everything about our life relates to the woman. The man gives the woman something and she gives back something bigger. However, the man is wired not to be conscious of this, not to worry about this, not to appreciate this, but to selfishly want to seek his own rights without bothering about his own obligation. And that is why we said, let's go to the Quran and see what Allah is saying rather than what human beings are doing. Sometimes it is after we have done a wrong thing that we look for justification for it. So this is how we got to Surah An-Nisa. Now, before we move on, because there was no voice note, we are making effort to record this as voice note, apart from the fact that this program is being streamed, live streamed, and then it's also being recorded. we are going to send this for processing so that we can benefit roundly from it. But tonight, what I want to do is to, in the first place, go back to our position on the will. Barrister Abdul Fattah Bakri has graciously and kindly sent something to us. Although I have sent this to the family Talim, I'm going to read it right away so that we can, whoever has access to Family Talim platform can go and also copy it. And whoever can help us to copy it can also copy it on this Zoom platform, on the chat room. Number one, the will must be dated. The name of the testator and his address must be stated. Something like, this is the last will of this person of this address, dated this day, 20 whatever, and corresponding to this Hijra day. On will, we want to add the following. The person that is writing his will must give directives on how he wants to be buried, the janaza, the shrouding, the place he wants to be buried. He will list out the assets he has, houses, bank account, etc. All physical assets, non-physical assets, everything must be listed. He should state the name of his wives, his children, his parents, if the parents are alive. He or she may state all this and indicate if they are dead or alive. He should set out the names of the executors of his will. These should be Muslims who are preferably younger than him. He could also name his children who are already adults as executors of his will, notwithstanding that they are also beneficiaries under the will. Women could also be named as executors, provided that these women have all it takes to be the executors. A valid will must be signed by the testator in the presence of two witnesses, preferably men. But if there are no men, then two women will stand for one man, making four. Those signing as witnesses to a will must be told in clear terms that they are signing as witnesses to a will, and the testator must sign the will in their presence, and they must sign the will in their presence, and they must also sign in the presence of each other. This is a fundamental requirement for the validity of a will under common law, and it does not violate any of the provisions of the Sharia. The testator is also advised to make wakil, wakfu rather, or gift distribution as sadaqatul jariyah for himself, and it must not be more than 1/3 out of the 1/3 that he can give to those not ordinarily entitled to inheriting as of right to a worthy cause. On the question of whether a Muslim can inherit a non-Muslim, whether as parent or otherwise, we must bear in mind always that it is the law of belief or culture and tradition that the testator should subscribe to in his life that determines who inherits him, and not the law or culture that the beneficiaries subscribe to. Thus, it is the law of a Muslim testator that the non-Muslim wife or children cannot inherit him. So, if non-Muslim testator also has a law or tradition that says his or a Muslim beneficiary cannot inherit him, then so be it. But if there is no, then the Muslim can inherit a non-Muslim, unless if he feels strongly that he does not want to inherit. But otherwise, nothing stops a Muslim from inheriting a non-Muslim relation. To drive on this assertion, I have recourse to Benin tradition, Among the Benin people, a first son inherits automatically the house of his father solely to the exclusion of his other siblings, provided he does the final burial rites of his father. The father is not allowed by will to change this. If he does, then that part of the will be set aside and not give effect to, nor does the fact that he marries under the Marriage Act affect this right of the first son. This tradition is codified and recognized in their will's law. This reinforced the assertion that it is the law that the testator subscribed to in his lifetime that determines who inherits him and what he or she inherits. If there is no such law or tradition, then all the children and wife will inherit. One can sell assets despite listing same in his will without amending or making a new will because of this. It will just happen that the beneficiaries cannot inherit that asset because it no longer exists as the property of the testator after his death. The witnesses to a will should also preferably be people who are younger to the testator so that they may be available to testify in case of disputes. Beneficiaries under a will cannot be witnesses to the will, but can be executors under it. There is another part of it that I can't remember where it is now, but which I must add that although it is recommended that we revise our will every other day, it doesn't have to be strictly followed. Why? There may be no changes in 3 days. And there is no point revising a will if there is no reason for it. Again, there may be reasons to revise the will every day. If, for example, the will contains recurrent money for recurrent expenditure, it is important every day that we spend this money to remove it from the total bank or cash balance. It may also be necessary if the person that is writing his will desires to leave cash at hand out of it, but leave cash at bank in it. Unless something happens to the cash balance, the bank balance, there will be no reason to visit the will. However, the spirit behind the recommendation that you review your will is to remind you that you may die at any time, and this will is your own conscious, voluntary, personal distribution of what you are acquiring so that you calm down. You're already giving it out. You're already telling yourself that this thing you are acquiring does not belong to you. It belongs to other people. So that is the wisdom. Now let's go back to the Quran. We want to just read 2 or 3 ayats to complete the subject we were discussing. We have said that you find the main issue within ayah 11 and 12. We have discussed ayah 11. Let's now go to ayah 12. Ayah 11 instructs you concerning your children. The male will take double what the female would take. If there are only daughters, they take 2/3. And if there's only one daughter, she takes half. And the parents will take 1/6 if the deceased left children. If the deceased had no children to inherit, then the mother takes 1/3, and if he had brothers or sisters for his mother, is 1/6. After any bequest made or debt, your parent or your children, Allah knows who is more useful to you, who is closer to you in obligation, who is more beneficial to you. Allah is indeed all-knowing, all-wise. Ayah 12. وَلَكُمْ نِصْفُ مَا تَرَكَ أَزْوَاجُكُمْ إِنْ لَمْ يَكُنَّ وَلَدٌ. And for you is half of what your wives leave if they had no children. You marry a woman as a divorcee, as a widow, there are no children between you, then that woman will part with half. You are inheriting your wife, you are taking half of her property. Yeah, the wisdom here is some of the property you are taking actually may belong to you. So it doesn't make sense for you not to inherit your wife. And it should be mimba the wasiyatin yusina biha audain. That is after a bequest, wasiya or debt. If your wife had, donated or bequested part of her property, or she was in debt at the point of death, you have to remove these two before you take half if she didn't have children. And for you, if they did not have a child for you, then they will take 1/4 instead of 1/6. They will take a quarter. But if you leave a child, then they will take 1/8 of what you leave after bequest made or debt. Basically, when a person dies, we will first look at his will. What bequest did he make? How much is he owing? We frequently find some rich people leaving nothing because their debts. Most of the things people see as their wealth were bank loans. And so when they die, there is really nothing to inherit from them. Some of the estates could have been used as collateral. And so we find ourselves in trouble concerning this. كان لكم ولد فلهن الثمن مما تركتم من بعد وصية توصون بها أو دين. We have read that they will take 1/8 if they have children, but if you left children, whether the children belong to them or not, once you have children, 1/8 is what your wife will take. If a man or woman leaves neither ascendants nor descendants, but as a brother or sister, then each of them will take 1/6. In other words, if this person that died had no father, no mother, no children, a kind of kalala, Allah is saying here that if the person has a brother or a sister, each of them will take 1/6. But if they are more than two, they will divide the property into 3, so they will share 1/3. And this one too, after bequest or debt, as long as there is no detriment, because Allah says, Wasiyatan min Allah. This is the ordinance of Allah. Wallahu alimun halim. Allah is all-knowing, all-forbearing. 2 ayatain have distributed the wealth. just 2 ayat, nobody is left out. Nobody that is not entitled is given a dime. Allah knows that this is not going to be pleasant. Let me mention 2 or 3 areas that do not make this pleasant except by faith. 1, it is not pleasant for a parent to inherit his or her child. But Allah knows. He says, your children or your parents, you don't know who is more beneficial. It may be your parents that will eventually take care of your children. So if you don't give them, you make them permanently unhappy. If you don't give them, you push them. If they are poor, you push them to take what belongs to your children. Now, number 2, you don't really like to inherit your beloved wife that has died. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't fit into our chemistry. What fits into our chemistry is for the woman to want to inherit her husband. It doesn't fit into our chemistry as men to inherit our wives. But Allah says, take from your wife, take from your late wife, in order that you will understand the gravity of this matter. Allah says, Tilka hududullah. These are the limits set by Allah. These are the boundaries. These are the red lines. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, يُدْخِلُهُ الْجَنَّةِ. He will enter Al-Jannah. He will be admitted into Al-Jannah. تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. Al-Jannah, underneath which rivers flow. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. He will abide therein forever. وَذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. This is supreme achievement. It's a great attainment. However, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَهُ, and he transgresses His limits, يُدْخِلُهُ النَّارَ. He will be admitted into fire. خَالِدًا فِيهَا. He will abide therein forever. Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar. You can see a wonderful syntactic presentation. Allah uses plural for whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger. Allah says, he will be admitted into Al-Jannah. He will abide therein forever. And khalidina fiha, he will be there forever. But when he wants to mention admission into hell, he says khalidan fiha, to abide therein eternally. Walahu adhabun mu'in, and we have a humiliating punishment. Faliyaz. So we end the subject of inheritance. How many ayat? It ends with ayah 14, although the meat of it are contained in ayah 11 and ayah 12. Ayah 11, ayah 12. But the discussion starts from ayah 7. Ayah 7. So 7 to 14, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 13 ayat. But only 2 give the details of everything. What are we discussing tonight? It is this. This inheritance is a call out to us to be conscious of the realities of death. In other words, whether you like it or not, you will die. Corollary to this is that Islam is a platform, a scheme, a program for you, a plan of action from your birth to your death and after. Islam presents human management before birth, after birth, before death, after death. It does not leave anything. Let's break it down summarily. Allah asks the believers to fear Allah and then to lower their gaze and guard their chastity. That is to prevent unwanted pregnancy, to prevent accidental discharge. Allah establishes, calls our consciousness to the relationship between vision and passion. Between vision and passion. What you see and what happens underneath. This may, wrongly, directly apply to men, but I've been corrected in Abeokuta some years back that women too see men and they respond emotionally to men. The difference between men and women is that when a man sees a woman, he can express his feelings to the woman. The woman may not have the courage. An average woman does not have the courage to express her feeling to the man that he sees. Meaning, don't look recklessly, so that what is built, what is wired to happen when you look at one another recklessly will not happen. And that is a striking of relationship. Then when this happens, it may result into pregnancy. What usually happens is that it will result into inappropriate relationship. When it happens, it may result into pregnancy. When pregnancy occurs, it may result into a child that is not prepared for, a child that just happened to come by accident will not be loved. A child that is not loved will not be cared for. A child that is not loved will not be prepared for. A child that is not loved will not be trained. You won't pray for a child that you feel has come to obstruct your progress, to disturb your life, to stop your agenda. You must, however, stop whatever may be responsible for or result in to that child. Number 2, when you are ready for marriage, don't start with relationship. And this is usually against the woman. When you allow a man to have a relationship with you, to have intimacy with you, the first thing you sell, Luwopoku, is your honor. A man that has access to you before nikah, before meeting your parents, has been offered a woman free of charge. This man will not trust you anymore, especially if he did not meet you intact. What a man thinks is, how many men do I know have gone in there? And anytime Shaitan brings the issue of distrust, because he does it, is the author of distrust in family. We have discussed this before, that one of the reasons for divorce is Shaitan, not wanting a successful family life. And one of the ways he causes a break in people's marriages is through injection of distrust. Once it creates a situation that will not make either the man or the woman to trust the other, then divorce is looming. And then even if it does not result into divorce, then it will certainly result into crisis. Such crises do not end, because as much as either of the party is struggling, especially the man, to put it away from his mind, Shaitan will create more circumstances that will make the man remember and then begin to doubt his spouse. So we know this. When you are ready for marriage, then marry. If you want intimacy, marry. If you give in to fasha, then you have given in to trouble. And then this is the beginning of most crises in most marriages. It is because you tested each other. It is also because somebody else had tested you, and you have also tested somebody else. At the beginning, the man will say, well, after all, I've also tested somebody. But later, the man will think that, after all, that person I tested, if she's not married, I can still marry her. Will she marry the man that tested her? So Allah regulates your life by telling you not to taste it. If you want the food, take the food, buy, pay, and fulfill all righteousness. Number 3, when you have a child through legal marriage, consider it as a responsibility. The child is part of the reason you are superior to your wife, وَبِمَا أَنْفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, because of what they spend from their wealth. You spend on the wife and the children, basically. And even if there is no schooling, you must feed them, you must accommodate them, spacious accommodation for that matter, you must clothe them. There is no way you will have to do these 3 things, even if it is just these 3 things, feeding, accommodation, and clothing, that you will not spend. So you must be ready to spend on the children. If every parent spends on their children, there will be no child beggar, there will be no child labor. If a child will labor, he will labor for his parents, not for another person's parent. No child will beg, no child will be desperate to make it because of deprivation. There will be no almajire. 3, from here, if every family takes care of the orphans in their families, whether as a result of the late father leaving virtually nothing for the orphans, in which case the orphans become sources of barakah, sources of infaq, sources of sadaqah, sources of, the first thing I mentioned is barakah, and is conscious, it's not a mistake. When you have orphans that you must take care of, any dime, any kobo you spend on that orphan is barakah. Because spending on an orphan is one of the means of removing nifaq in your life. Spending on the orphans and the miskin is one of the means of removing nifaq in your life. Allah says, أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين. The two characteristics of the munafiqun mentioned here are that they are those who deny the faith and they do two things. One, they oppress the orphans and they do not struggle to feed the poor. You can still be a munafiq if you spend only for your children. And these children will become orphans one day, whether they grow old like me or not. To lose your father is to lose your protector, your guardian, your friend, your advisor, your counselor, your everything. A father is a little God to the children. Now, even if your father had no money to give you, he may struggle, he may borrow, but somebody else's father is not under obligation to even remember that you exist, let alone that your father does not exist. So an orphan is in a despicable, desperate, and vulnerable situation. When you take an orphan out of this trouble, you are buying barakah in your life. The more you take care of the orphans, the more Allah takes care of you. And the more you feed the poor, and in this case, it is not giving the poor 5 naira, 5,000, 10,000. No. It is making sure that the poor can live, to work. Food is number one. Feeding the poor is number one sadaqah. The next one is clothing. Money is the least. Money is the least form of sadaqah. So it's a great deal. If every orphan, every poor person in your family receives the grace, the opportunity, the leverage of care from every other member of the family, poverty will be reduced. It is not possible for poverty to go in any society, but it is possible for poverty to be moderated, to be reduced to the barest minimum, and it is possible for poor people, for orphans to be comfortable. And this will reduce crime. So you can see that it is from the care for a woman that every good thing emanates. We are going to read next week, inshallah, somebody to remind me how to prepare for your wife before you die. How much a man should struggle to have in reserve before he dies. And that is the spiritual savings. Allah does not want us to save money, but he wants us to save ma'aish, provision, livelihood, in case you die. And we are going to continue from here, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. As I wait for your own comment, I want to hear and listen to your voice. Yeah, Architect Kasim Anima Sharon, Commander Jala, about you, Commander. Yeah.
Kasim Anima Sharon from Lagos, Lele.
Cousin ni. Oh, Ustaz, cousin, animation, Abalajin. Whichever you prefer. Yeah, share cousin, animation. Unmute and let's hear your voice.
Okay, yeah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We thank our Murshid for that wonderful presentation. I just have like 3 points to make, to contribute. But before that, I would like to know each time Imam had because he has done that many times. Even though this one is very loaded and enriched. I usually cast my mind back to Abeokuta, when we started. I remember Imam saying that when he brought Dr. Hidru Mustafa to Holy Prophet School, Adidotun, that was in the early 90s. And he said he does not know any other scholar that can discuss this effectively, apart from Dr. Mustafa in Abeokuta then. And of course, we saw that you hardly see this topic being discussed in the Islamic circle. So that was the first time that I'll be exposed to this inheritance matter, and it has actually spurred me to actually try to learn a lot in this regard. And we thank Imam for that. To the extent that I've had cause to also present lectures on this aspect of Sharia. It has also shown that what we know that Imam is not quote unquote an expert in Sharia. He's not a mathematician, but he has actually done the jobs of these people with this topic excellently. And what is even interesting is that you hardly find in a religious circle, Muslim circle, where this is being discussed. When they people can move on. Even where they have the so-called experts. So may Allah continue to in our Imam. So the other point that I want to make, one, this strengthen the bond in the family. For example, Allah has restrained us from using our hand to scatter our family. So you cannot disinherit your wife and your children. Even if you have a delinquent child, you cannot say, don't give this child my property. You cannot say that. As long as he remains a Muslim, you cannot disinherit your son or your children. Neither can you disinherit your wife. Even a wife that is going through divorce, that is going through revocable Ida. If the man dies, why the woman is in Ida, the wife will still inherit. That's to tell us that the law is meant to protect the sanctity of the family. Number 2 point that I want to make is that this law of inheritance becomes effective when the owner of the property, when he dies, he has a right to dispose his property the way he wishes. He can do hibah or atiyah, that is gift. He can give his children property the way he wants before he dies. But when doing this, it has to be on equal basis, no male or female factor here. He can settle them to empower them the way he wants before he dies. In the same vein, we need to be careful when we, because when we have properties, when we are alive, let's say a man has 2 wives and he has 4 cars or 5 cars in the compound, and any of the wives can take any of them anytime, without specifying for each of the wives that this is your car. Here is that if a man specifies, if property in their name, okay, this is your own car, bought in our name, then that car belongs to her. It is not part of what will be shared after the man's demise. Or he built houses for them while he was alive in their name. then those houses are not part of the ones that will be shared after the man's demise. And the last point I want to make is that on the issue of next of kin and some of the issues around public service and all of that, it should be noted that the next of kin is meant to collect the property, whether it has shares here, or the entitlement with the government, whatever. We collect all of that from all the sources. The job of the next of kin is to collect, not to enjoy. So whether it is the wife or the younger brother or whoever is the next of kin, you collect and then bring it to now submit to other property that will now be valued and shared at the end of the day. And also, sometimes we get to hear questions around when you fill a form as a government employee, what do I put there? Where you are asked to specify, in case you die in service, what need to go to who? The right thing to do for a Muslim is just one person, the whole of the thing, 100% goes to this person. And with understanding that the person takes it in trust and he will render it with the rest of the property when they are being shared. So, Assalamu alaikum, that's just my own contribution.
Imam, you are muted. You are muted, sir.
Who is next?
I think it's
I didn't know that I'm muted. I said that's a wonderful contribution. Jazakallah khairan. Ustaz Qasim animation. Can we go to Professor Murat?
World Food Day.
Whoever is able to alaikum salam tila. Now,
Jazakallah khairan. We pray that Allah will keep you for us and bless all your efforts and attach this as a great service in His cause. My question is, when in a situation where a man does not live an estate, but like a building, just one building that belongs to like he and his brother. And then before the death of both of them, it was not specified. They did not specify that, okay, this is the person that built, or this is the portion that is my home. So if such a man dies, how will the children be able to take care of that house? It's not houses, just one house for brothers.
well, that's a very dangerous one. But what we tell people in these circumstances is to turn the house into the family house. The children will contribute occasionally. If the house can be put out to rent, they put the house to rent. If it is not worth being put out for rent, then they will contribute and take care and maintain the house regularly. That's just what they can do. However, there's going to be an understanding among the children that this house belongs to their family, and nobody is going to own it, because again, your own children may not inherit it because it does not directly belong to you. We have many cases like that. It's very, very difficult. Joint ownership of property usually presents a very difficult situation for us. Wallahu alam. Except if anybody has
Thank you,
is
sir. Sir, secondly, I want to ask,
no.
hello, sir.
Mhm.
The case of wife, does it also apply to wives? When you said wife will take a particular percentage, does it also apply to wives?
To wives? I don't
Yes,
understand.
you said I think it's 1/6.
No,
You said the wife will take.
whatever a wife will take is what the wives will share. You don't understand?
Okay.
If the wife is going to take
Yes.
1/8, if there are 4 wives, they will take only the 1/8. They will share equally. It is not that each wife will take 1/8. No. The wives
So a
will
wife that does not have a child cannot be disinherited.
no. The wife that does not have a child will be inherited by her husband and her siblings. If she has siblings, that is the rule. That's what we read. Now, if you go back to read the ayah patiently, ayah 12, you will understand it. She will be inherited by her.
Dr. Zikulai.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum salam.
3 quick questions. One is to your submission that a Muslim can inherit a non-Muslim. And you cited the case of Benin. I don't know whether you are talking about the Sharia or you're talking about the Nigerian constitution. 2.
I was reading Barrister Abdul Fattah Bakri's submission, and he's there, he's here.
So I'm asking now whether I think I set up his hand, whether it is the Sharia position or Nigerian constitution, because the use of the case of Benin sounds very.
It's an example of a situation where the constitution recognizes the tradition upon which the deceased died. So if in his own tradition, whether a Christian or animist, if non-practitioner of his religion does not inherit him, it will apply. The Muslim may not inherit him. In case somebody takes this matter to court, this is my understanding of what Barrister was saying, but he has raised his hand.
Yeah.
Barrister, please unmute, so that we can settle this matter once for all.
Yes, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yes, the scholars are divided on that issue as to whether a Muslim can inherit non-Muslim. The argument of those who said that a Muslim can inherit a non-Muslim is to the fact that it is the law, it is the law the testator subscribed to that determines who inherits him, not the beneficiaries. And that is the position under Sharia law. It is the position of Sharia law that it is the law, the practice, the faith the testator subscribes to. That is what his estate will be shared in accordance with. So what we are saying is, for a Muslim now, who says a non-Muslim cannot inherit him, it is because it is specifically stated in the Sharia. That is why non-Muslim cannot inherit a Muslim. But we are saying that for a non-Muslim testator, is there anything under his own law that says a Muslim cannot inherit him? If there is none, then a Muslim can inherit him. And that is why we gave the example of Benin custom, that in Benin, this is what things. It's just like under Yoruba tradition now. When the Yoruba man dies and they want to share his estate, it is either they will use idigi or ori ojori. That is the two they will use in sharing it. So that is what we are saying, that once he is a Muslim, you know, it's the fact that he's a Muslim and he died that is a Muslim, a practicing Muslim. That is why we will not use ori ojori or idigi for him. That is the argument, sir. So quickly, sir, if I may also add, for a woman or a wife, if a wife should die without a child, whether a widow or a divorcee, the husband will inherit half. But if a widow should die, a divorcee should die, but in his previous marriage, he has a child, the husband will not take half. The husband will still take 1/4, notwithstanding that the child that survived that woman does not belong to his present husband. I hope I'm clear on that issue. Then the question Sister Nora asked was to the fact that, is it that, if I understood that correctly, our question was to the fact that a wife that does not have a child, will she also inherit? Yes, she will inherit as a wife, notwithstanding that she does not have a child for the deceased, and she will inherit equally with the other co-wife. That is the 1/8 that the wife or wives are entitled to will be shared equally. That is the clarification I want to make, sir. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Very much. Yeah, can we take other questions from Dr. Zikrullah?
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, except to ask Barrister that what I know is that a different religion was what I know. I'm not sure whether somebody is a Muslim or not Muslim. My second question has to do with, is it a sin if we refuse to distribute or share our father's property, for example? Yes, our father died. The children just decided not to share the properties, therefore anybody wants to use. Have we committed any sin for not doing that?
Yeah, it's a sin. The sin is that of disobedience, because Allah does not give the dead property. The dead does not have property. So you are depriving the natural heir. And you cannot say that everybody who subscribes to not sharing this property is sincere. What we are told is that, well, scholars' opinion, they didn't back it with any hadith, except the ayah of Quran and hadith that whoever is the property of the orphan has eaten fire into his mouth. What we are told is this: the economic survivor of a child or wife may depend on the property of the deceased. Why deprive him or her? Allah knows why. And Allah has said that this thing, you don't know who among these heirs will be of benefit to you. And this benefit is not while you are alive. Benefit to you when you are dead. You don't know who is going to spend it to make you to continuously get reward, even after death. And you don't know whether it's your child that will squander it, drink alcohol with it, commit zina with it, to the extent that you may be spiritually uncomfortable even after death. So why not share? The exception is where it is just a house. It is just an exception in principle, although what the Quran says is that in Kalla, whether it is small or plenty, whether it's just small things or plenty. So it has to be shared. So we don't want animosity. Islam insists on peace in the family. So you don't want somebody who will be secretly complaining that if only our daddy's property has been shared, I won't be in this situation. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Well, Jazakumullah khairan.
Well, yeah.
Except to also add that sometimes the not sharing of the party is seen as a means of entrenching peace in that family. Because it's a family where you have people who have apostated, and that if you now say that they cannot inherit, there could be kata and rule of law. So if you just
we use that as a precedent. I mean, we allow peace, the necessity for peace, to precede, to override this necessity for equity. So if equity will bring trouble, we will set aside equity and opt for peace.
all right.
And opt for peace.
That's my understanding. That
houses could be sold if they are all Muslims. Estates could be sold and the money distributed among people. I've seen a situation where one of the children asked them to sell those houses. Why bringing people? He now offered to buy the house at the highest cost. So he bought the house, he distributed it, and then made it also available for everybody. So they were still meeting in that house, but he had given everybody a share of their mother's property. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So I agree with you.
The last question, well, which I think partly has been answered, is the issue of joint ownership between husband and wife too.
It's not allowed.
But people don't stay party seat. That's the unfortunate thing. So the question is, how do such property become shared after inheritance?
One of the reasons it is wrong. That's one of the reasons joint ownership is wrong. So it is not just wrong in principle, it is wrong. It is wrong in Islam, in spirit, in every sense. It is wrong. It's wrong in every sense. Wallahu alam.
Alaikum sir.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My question is, if a woman does not have a husband, maybe her husband is dead, and she does not have a child, who will inherit her property?
We have read it now. The siblings will inherit her properties. His brothers or sisters will inherit her. The brothers and sisters will inherit her.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My question is that if a Muslim dies so young and have young children who are in primary school, even nursery school, and he has so many properties, based on the just concluded question, is it compulsory that his property must be shared? If people say that they should give it to some people to manage, so that those children, when they attain, maybe the last one when they attain 21 years of age, the property can be shared. Because I've seen where a Muslim died and said that his property should not be shared until the last child, who was then 2 years old, attained the age of 21. Is it correct or not? I mean, is it right or not?
It is right and wrong. Right to the extent that it has to be managed by somebody until the child attains maturity. Wrong to the extent that it must be shared first. After sharing it, the children that are not mature will now be assisted, sometimes by their mothers, sometimes by their uncles, whoever is more suitable. And I've read it earlier, I have 5-6. That you test an intelligence for ability to manage his property before you hand over the property to her. For the girl, the day she's marrying is the day you hand over her property. Once she attains maturity, she wants to marry, even at age 14, she can go. She's good to go. As for the man, he must be tested. Even when he is 18, 20, he must be tested, he must be observed. If we know that he will take drug with the money, he will squander it, we will wait until he marries. When he marries, we assume that he has reached the age of responsibility, then we hand over his property to him. But the property must be shared first, because a heir may die, and we will have deprived the heir that dies of his own right share. Wallahu alam.
Jazakallah khair.
يكون. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع وتب علينا.
This weekend is a women program in October.
Okay, this weekend, inshallah, this weekend we have our women forum. Women forum this weekend, Oshogbo. We are inviting, especially our women. This is a physical meeting. We ask Allah to preserve our resource persons, to preserve everybody, to protect us, and to accept what we're going to do this weekend, inshallah, as an act of ibadah, to reward us abundantly, and to make it an alibi to admit us into Al-Jannah. I want to thank everybody. I want to ask Allah to reward everybody. It is 10 minutes after 9:30. Let us be patient to come together again next week to do it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم. الحمد لله رب